Producer dude, here we are again. We've got a guy I don't think you know.
I do
Terry
not.
Brown.
Yep, don't know him.
He started Wired2Fish amongst many other things, which we'll get into. He actually started something I didn't even know he started, which is kind of a big deal. But I like him because he kind of just calls it like it is, and he's been around long enough that he actually knows what's happening, and he's not afraid to say something. So, because we've had people on the podcast that they kind of clammed up, and I don't think Terry's going to. So,
well, that'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about some of these guys. You're like, man, this guy, he kind of clammed up on us a little bit. We know we could have given more. I don't feel like that's going to happen with him. But do you have any insightful things before we get started? Normally, you hit me with like a pep talk, or normally chastising me with something.
Yeah, no, I have nothing today. I came up totally unprepared with chastising.
Perfect. I will give you a boost here so we can have you more motivated. I was at a boat launch many miles away from where we typically fish, and a guy said, "Hey man, appreciate the the videos and the podcast. Did you leave that deadbeat producer dude home?" And I looked at this guy because it was like 6 a.m. We're barely awake, and I said, "Hey, only I'm allowed to call him a deadbeat."
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just happy
I defended you.
Me. Yeah, that he remembered.
I defended you though. Yeah, I was like your white knight at 6 a.m.
Oh God.
As far as so we don't need waiters, let's just bring on Terry Brown. Terry Brown, welcome to the Bigwater podcast. This has been a long time in the making. You got some little under the weather there, and we had to delay this a little bit, but I'm looking forward to chatting with you. There's not too many guys that are going to be as open as me and you in one room.
Well, it's funny because I went to ICAST, and every year I go to ICAST, I get something new. And I called this one the Haitian flu because all of my Uber drivers were from Haiti. So I don't know, man. That was brutal deal, but I've recovered and back with the program.
It's always curious at ICAST. There's obviously thousands of people there from literally all over the world, let alone the United States. And it's like certain companies seem to get it, like I know one year, like everybody at Rapala got sick, and that was even before some of the craziness we've got now, but it's weird how that works, isn't it?
Well, I'm not a believer in anything that anybody tells me that's official. So I don't know. I think I had the flu again, and COVID, I'm not sure about. I don't want to get into political discussion about that, but whenever anybody tells you had it, the best thing I can tell you is I had 2 vaccinations and went to the hospital with COVID. So nothing worked. I did that about 3 years ago in January, and I don't believe them. I just don't believe them. Ross, one of the things is it's sort of like fishermen. You can't believe too much. It's always embellished. It's always something a little bit better, bigger, whatever. And the vaccination thing, I'm not in favor of it.
Fishermen embellish? That's the news story of today.
Well, we don't really embellish; we lie. But it's lying doesn't sound the same as embellishment. Embellishment kind of almost sounds kind of sexy, but when you look at lying, that's not a really good term at all. So,
well, you remember those old metal scales that are about 3 inches by 2 inches that are called the D-liar? I think that says it all.
I got some sitting right over there, actually, right over there in the cabinet.
You probably need 3 or you probably need 3 or 4.
Yeah, I've got idea. Good point.
But let's let the people that maybe don't know or haven't followed some of your stuff. You've been kind of that behind the scenes guy that started a lot of stuff in fishing, right? I mean, they don't know you like a Kevin Van Dam or something necessarily. No disrespect, but starting Wired2Fish is that arguably your biggest, achievement, or if you want to call it that?
Wired2Fish has been a labor of love, and there's no question about it. I mean, I had a lot of help with that, and I started out writing for Bassmaster and Bass Times and some of that kind of stuff. And Matt Vincent, who I'm sure you know too, a very good friend, he told me one day, he said, just write stuff you want to write about. So I did, and I got a lot of really good coverage with that. And I love Bass Times because it was about the diehard angler. And then as things naturally progress, I started doing radio and television a little bit. I did the Great Angler Debate on ESPN. I did a lot of the classic yearbooks on ESPN. But I kind of like the back seat, honestly. It's everybody seems like they want credit in fishing. You know what, Ross? It's a thing where people, everybody wants to be the king of the hill, and I really don't give a crap about it, honestly. I just want to do good things and help people. And I'd say Wired2Fish is really up there because it grew much bigger. Todd Hamill and Marty Glorvigan, Scott Glorvigan, Sealock and a bunch of guys. We all, were blessed with the fact that we picked the worst time in the world to do it in 2008 when the economy sucked. And then it really took off. And it was because we were trying to teach people how to catch more fish. But I was also involved in Bass Fan. I was one of the 3 principals there and kind of took the back seat there. That allowed me to be able to start Wired2Fish without a non-compete. And so, it's that and high school fishing, I think, are the 2 big ones for me. High school fishing, there was no state in the country that actually sanctioned high school fishing. And I got this idea that I wanted to do it. So I got talking to a bunch of people, and I wrote 8 proposals, and all of them went in a garbage can, I think. And then all of a sudden I had one of the directors come in here. We were doing a bunch of video for him, and he came in and we went fishing for a day, and he sounded like a 3rd grade girl. He was just as giddy as anybody in the world. I said, suppose we get the high school kids enamored with this. And he said, send me the proposal again. And I will never forget the best line I've ever written in my life, I think, was every kid I get fishing's one less I have to worry about breaking into my car. So it was, that's what I think sold it. Honestly, Ross, I do. It was, one of those things where high school fishing, we had 2,400 kids first year, and we had over 25,000 this year. So that's just in Illinois, and it's growing every year.
Okay, so I was going to say, give me an education. I know you're in Illinois. So high school fishing technically started in Illinois.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there was a lot of, like, North Carolina had a bunch of people that were doing club stuff, and Texas had a few, and Florida, and a lot of places like that, but nothing sanctioned. And what we basically did in Illinois was make it a sport. So it's like football, basketball, baseball, and it had a sectional championship and a state championship, and we actually sanctioned it as a sport. And it was amazing to me how many times I've had this said to me. People come up to you and they go, man, I wish they had that when I was in high school, and that
I'm one of them.
Proud. Yeah, it makes you proud. I mean, it really does. And now you got kids. I saw Marty Robinson's kids both won championships here this last week, and one is a high schooler and one is a pro. And they probably would have maybe followed their dad's footprint, his steps, but maybe not. And there's been a lot of really good high school anglers. You look at the young anglers in professional fishing today. A lot of them fished in high school, and that makes me really proud.
Yeah, that's like 100%, because I was out of college before college fishing was, a thing, and that would have been super cool. Aside from just almost a stepping stone or something to do if you're into fishing, maybe you don't have the opportunities, but even a social thing for like outdoorsmen, on campuses where, maybe that's not the hip thing to do. You know what I mean? You're not the cheerleader or the football player or something like that, right? But you're an honest guy. Like, that's why I love it. I've wanted to do this with you for a while, because so many of the guys that get on here, producer dude's going to back me. Like, we'll be talking ahead of time, and then we hit play, and they're like, brakes just screeching. And I understand that with the way the world we live in a little bit. And that's why you got to get a crotchety old guy like you a little bit, right? That just,
it's amazing. It's amazing that people won't tell the truth. And I think that's what's wrong with our world, is the fact that, if you're not politically correct, you're dead. And I just can't do that. I don't have that. My makeup's not that way. I'm a Midwest guy. I grew up in a farm area, small town, 75 people in the town I grew up in. And, it's kind of a neat deal for me as I look at, somebody says, oh man, everybody knows you. Everybody does this. I'm just a dude, man. I'm just a guy who grew up in Hudson, Illinois. And now I live in Normal, Illinois, which is really kind of an oxymoron. But
they need to change that town after you've been in it.
Yeah, after I've been in it a while. It's I think we're blessed in the fact that when high school fishing started, we had a lot of kids that weren't football players, that weren't basketball players, that weren't track guys, but love the outdoors and love to be able to be part of it. And it's amazing to me how many of these kids now they say, wow, I'm a sports. They got their high school letters on the front of their shirts and have an affinity with their high school, which they never would have. Grades sucked, and their grades got better, and it's just a great story. Great story.
Are you also, though, I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but on the same note with high school fishing, like the couple of things that are going on there is like, even at ICAST, I don't know. I don't think me and you had this conversation. Like the biggest segment, because cheating's in the world right now. That's like everything, right? Like somebody just got caught in a chess tournament or something a little while ago. But the high school segment most people would say is the worst cheating section right now, like rampant wise?
I don't know if it's cheating as much as unaware. When I wrote the high school program, I set the rules. I did everything pretty much myself, being a guy named Dave Ganaway, who I wouldn't have got it done if it hadn't been for Dave. But the thing that I'm most disappointed about in what I did and what I should have done was talk about integrity and ethics. Because, usually the guy that's coaching the two kids that are on the high school team is just some dad who doesn't fish, who just drives around, had enough money to buy him a boat, and doesn't know ethics from a chicken coop. And that, to me, is the thing that I wish I'd have done a better job on. I didn't really include it because I thought people knew it, but they really didn't. I mean, you could be fishing a point, make a cast on a point, and you turn around, there's a boat right next to you, and you say, I fished there yesterday. Well, you're not here today, dude. You're not here today. I'm here today. And when I leave, you're welcome to it. But that's the thing that we didn't do. And, the cheating part of it, I'm sure there's plenty of it. There's in the professional game, there is. I think that's the most disappointing thing for me in my love of the sport is the fact that the bending of rules, Ross, they're to the point of breaking. And the ability to be able to take a group of people and have everybody treated the same is very difficult. Both Major League Fishing and BASS will tell you that's tough, and you've got a set of rules, but everybody's trying to bend them. They're just trying to get that edge, try to get that little advantage. And that's the part that kind of scares me a little bit about professional fishing right now.
Well, before we even get to bending the rules, though, I mean, you think about, again, spot holding, like that's the thing that's going on, right? Or like I remember listening to a Seth Fighter podcast where he was talking about, hey, the only way to make it into pro fishing now is to have a rich dad in college fishing type thing. And again, I have some people I know that are involved in this, and they've seen that it's maybe not gone some of the direction that you probably intended, or just fishing in general, because of somebody trying to throw money at something. Not that that's going to happen in anything, but like you said, there's the difference between somebody maybe not knowing it's all right, or that you should be, spot jumping, hole spudding, whatever. And there's a really big difference between somebody paying someone to spot hold. Like that's a whole different ball of wax right there. But I think it even goes farther, like you said, about the education thing, because I know, I've made my living completely fishing for over 20 years, and I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had an insurance claim for my guide service or for, competing or whatever it would be. And the boat, the prices have gone, as far as insurance wise, not prices, but insurance wise, have gone through the roof. Are you aware of this? And literally talking to some of the agents, I said, hey, well, what's going on? And again, this is not a knock on you. This is a real deal. Is the guy said, you ever hear of high school fishing or college fishing? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, there was 5 deaths because some of these kids are just, again, it's just like a 16-year-old kid gets a car, right? Like the accident rate is higher. And some of these guys getting in a boat doing 70 miles an hour, there was 2 or 3 of them in a short amount of time flung out, and impaled on a stump. And it's like, man, they're rocket ships, these boats nowadays. Terry, you're going to have to put mute on that thing because somebody's really wanting to get a hold of you.
Oh, it's probably my bride. Yeah. She calls me every morning. I kind of just put it to the side.
Can you talk to her while we're doing this and ask her if what her thoughts are on high school fishing? She
is behind whatever I want to do because my wife doesn't fish, believe it or not. And I think we've been married almost 50 years. And that's probably the reason why. That's probably the reason why. Because, when you have a wife that fishes, you got to buy 2 of everything. And you're talking about boat costs. I think you just went through the exercise that I love to do. And that's that working on an old boat turning into a good one, right? And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's, Saturdays, Sundays, nights, all that kind of stuff to make an old boat into a good one. But that's where a lot of kids are missing the boat. I think we need to train kids on that as well. The danger you say when you say, okay, there's 4 or 5 kids killed, you've got 60 million people that are participating. So 60 million and 4 or 5, I know it sounds terrible, but it's not astronomically high number. Now, part of the training process is taking a kid and not letting them go out there when they get a car and just got their driver's license. It's not. It's telling them the rules of the road and how to do things and not run 70 mile an hour anywhere. You know, boats, Ross, have gone up every year in the last 25 or 30 years by 3%. I remember the first Skeeter I bought a long time ago was $16,700, and it had everything on it.
That's because you're old.
It was loaded up, dude. It was loaded up. Had, you know, had a 200 on it, a Yamaha. Everything was loaded up. You can't buy a piece of junk that's sitting out in the pasture for $16,000 now. But 3% every year is astronomically high, and it has become a rich guy's sport. No question about it. And I think that's kind of bad. I think that Seth's an example of not being a rich guy that made it, you know, but he's a rarity anymore. You've got to have some dough. You've got to have some real money behind you. So,
yeah, let's back up a hot second there. Is you know, the project boat, that was kind of an inspiration, you know, as things looming in the economy without saying it, right? And I thought, you know, these boats are getting so crazy expensive. Everybody thinks you have to have a, you know, 900 horsepower motor and 25 drafts and everything. And if you watch, you know, some of the videos and see my boat, I don't do a lot to detract from that because, you know, we've got a lot of that stuff. And we bought that project boat it was junk and completely redid the thing. I mean, everything was done on it. The hubs were toast. I mean, it was just, you name it, we redid it. And some of that stuff, you know, I knew how to do, and some of that stuff I didn't. That was kind of neat. It ended up being a 14-part series that we did, and we brought people in. I asked people like you. You gave me an amazing tip, even though I know you're so humble with that stuff. But the tip of just that straight scraper blade to get that carpet glue off. I mean, little things like that. Like, you're not going to find that on by Google, most likely. So that was huge, because that was the worst part of the whole deal was getting the carpet glue off. And we probably did a better job than we needed to, you know, with putting down that flooring, but kind of wanted to do it right.
I've done about 20 of them, honestly. I've had anything from a 12-footer to everything else, and to be honest with you, it's kind of a game. I mean, for me, it's a puzzle. And I had a 340 Ranger that was a piece of crap. I mean, it had more mice in it than a warehouse, you know, and it was just one of those deals. I parked it outside for a couple of weeks, put mothballs in it just to get rid of the mice and the ants and all that kind of stuff. So I empathize with where you were at. I think the thing of it is, though, I think that now I'm seeing some of these organizations, some of these clubs, some of these high schools that are now doing it, saying, hey, guys, that's going to be what we're going to do in the winter. We're going to take an old boat and we're going to try to do the right thing with it. And they don't have to be that fancy. I mean, get a good trolling motor and a halfway decent engine, and you got a pretty good operation there. But, you know, of course, all of us, like you and I, we retrofit everything. So it's, you know, we've actually got better stuff on it than probably most people would put on it.
I get a lot of guys that ask me, whether it's a couple friends of mine that had kids that were in the college fishing thing, or just buddies that are, you know, their kids, or even maybe it's them, and they're like, hey, you know, I want to fish, man. That's what I want to do. And I want to be a guide or this or that or whatever it is. And then they're like, what do I need to do? I'm like, well, you need to learn how to fix shit because you're going to break stuff. And the young guys break it at an exponential level because they don't know, you know, they don't know the limitations of their equipment, and it's just hammered down wide open, and they don't understand there's some method to the madness. And not being able to fix stuff is a problem, because when you're doing, you know, the stuff you're going to start at, you're not going to have a support team there. And even if you do, you know, parts are always right now. I don't care what you got. I don't care if it's got wheels and a steering wheel, right? There are issues, and learning how to fix that stuff and having parts and knowing how to do that, that's a big, big deal, man.
Well, you know, I found out, and I'm anal retentive as hell about this, okay? But what it is that if anything breaks on any trip, it's repaired before I go to the next trip. And that is something I've carried with me a long time. My grandfather told me one time, he said, if a man can make it, a man can fix it. And my dad was really handy. My dad could still do pretty much anything he wants to do at 90 years old. But he could plumb. He could, you know, do carpentry work. He could do electrical work. He could do all that kind of stuff. Well, it kind of came as a natural progression for me. And when I get in the boat business, you know, when I started getting into building these boats and showing people how to do things, it was a natural deal that I was just going to try to fix it. Well, if I break something, which you typically will, if you break something, I'm fixing it before I go the next time. And I don't think a lot of kids do that. I've gotten in some boats, and I won't tell you some of the pros. Some of them are fishing in the MLF right now. You get their toolkit out, and it looks like a bucket of rust. You know, you can't even open the pliers. You're like, you know, trying to pull the pliers open, you know, and that is just not appropriate for me. It might be okay for them, but if you have to use it, you want it to be usable. So having a good set of tools and knowing how electrical stuff works. Now, did you do harnesses in your boat? Did you have to do all new harnesses, wire harnesses?
We didn't do a complete harness except for the motor, but we did. I redid the fittings because a lot of the fittings were corroded beyond belief or connections broke, you know, the actual clips and stuff. So we went and put, I don't know what you want to call them, weather packs or whatever on. And so I redid that in almost all of them.
Yeah, I've you know, done both. I've done, you know, when you look underneath, one of the things that I get aggravated with these boat companies is if it works, it's good enough. And you get underneath the console of some of these boats and it's the biggest spider mess in the world. And there's no schematic. Nobody knows where anything goes. It just kind of goes and you kind of look at it and it's a big glob of spider web. And I think that, you know, we can do things better. There's no question if I was a boat manufacturer, first thing I would do is figure out how to make runs better. Because, you know, we got runs in our boats that are this big and you got ends on a cable that are that big. And you're trying to get this cable. You're trying to get this cable through this hole. Sorry, it's not going to
work. The good thing about my project boat was it didn't have things like a trolling motor on it, so I had less holes and things to deal with for putting something on that I wanted, which is great. The problem is, like you just hit the nail on the head. When that boat was built, somebody might have had one 7-inch graph on that boat. And I might have added more than that to it, right? And the gauge of wire that we were using back then was maybe 14, you know, maybe 16. And now we're running a whole lot more than that. And so I don't know if you saw part of that. I know we talked about it. Is we ended up taking a rigging wire and put a file on each end of it, like literally drilled a hole in one and hooked that rigging wire on each end and ran it back and forth like a buzzsaw because we had in the Ranger completely filled with foam. Amazing deal, except for when you have to run wire. And so, yeah, to your point, trying to make a run where there wasn't one, completely solid foam, it would took days because we were putting drill bits in there.
Your point's well taken. Is that nobody, when they build a boat, you go out and you buy a boat from Ranger or Skeeter or whoever you buy your boat from, they don't want you working on it. They don't want you to add stuff to it. They don't want you to do, you know, retrofit it like we're doing. That's not what they did. They built this package and it's supposed to stay like that. Well, like you said, the 7-inch graph that was a LCD is on there and you want to do something different. That's not in their repertoire. I mean, you call somebody sometime, I say, hey man, I got a 1.5-inch end on a graph and I'm trying to get it through a hole that's 1 inch. You know, what do I do here? You know, and like you said, you took a file and drilled your own hole. Well, that's about what you have to do. About what you have to do.
And people, they're getting better, but I think they absolutely have to, right? Because people are running 6 graphs and Mega Live and all this stuff. And like on Ranger, I used to order, because I, you know, custom order my boat, and I would get an extra rigging tube put down the starboard, you know, gunnel. And now that's a standard deal. And I can't even, I mean, it's them adapting, you know, and some companies have not, but it almost have to, because that manufacturer, like Ranger, fills that one rigging tube. It's, I'm going to guess, about a 2-inch PVC pipe. And now they put another one right above it, which is nice because then you add your stuff in there and you know what you got. And it's a lot easier, obviously, to pull through.
Well, it's easier to fix, too. You know, if you know where everything's at, you can fix something that breaks, because if you rig your own boat, which I tell a lot of guys, you know, having home runs from the battery to your piece of a gear is the most important thing you can do. You know, you don't want to go to some patch panel that goes to another patch panel, because your power, the clean power is gone. So having that home run from the battery to the front or wherever you're going is critical, because you use so much power. These graphs are terrible with power, terrible. And they'll, you know, if you had power somewhere on you, like your watch, it'd suck the power right out of your watch, you know? And that's the thing about these graphs. They're better. They're a lot better quality than anything we've ever had, but they use the heck out of the power, man. And then you got boxes and side boxes and black boxes and all this other stuff you have to plug in too. So you got to have good power part of it.
Yeah, I know. People, just the other day, I had a guy said he looked at my compartment and he saw the 2 Dakota Lithium 135s, and he's like, why would you even have one of those? I'm like, well, clean power. But then the thing is if you really were to run everything I have, 135 may not be enough in a day. I mean,
right.
Because You know, again, when you do it for a living, and I know people are going to roll their eyes, but you know, I can't. Losing GPS is not just a function thing or a vanity thing. When you're out 25 miles like we were the other day and you can't see any shore, that becomes a bad situation. So,
you know, these lithium companies just keep getting better, and it's all about the cell and it's all about the board that they have. But now I'm seeing these guys that are putting GPS in the battery. What a killer deal. I mean, if you're out in the middle of the Everglades or out in the Great Lakes and they can find you because of your battery, how cool is that? And, you know, the good old days are now, honestly, they really are when it comes to boats. And, you know, the negative things about fishing are the positive things that are happening. And, you know, ICAST is a great example. You know, I can remember there wasn't ever any lithium battery companies there. And I think there was 15 this year.
I was going to say they're like cooler companies. Remember the coolers? How many coolers there are? That's the new battery thing. And that's funny you should say that. It's a shameless segue. But you told me a long time ago the first guy in ain't going to be the guy that gets the credit. And I think that extends way past fishing. But as you go through the new product showcase as a grumpy old man, right? And I respectfully say that, they're like 1 year a bucket won like best of category for a marine accessory or something, and it's like, I'm sure that's a great bucket. So is that either a sign of some BS in the whole system, or people not bringing stuff on, or is there too much copying going on, or like, having been to however many ICASTs or just being in the business, seeing these changes, it's got to just kind of jerk you around a little bit.
I get aggravated with it. You know, a new product showcase, when you've got reels in a glass case and I can't touch them, I won't vote for them. And I made that a point to the people there. And, you know, this now when they've got it kind of on the water deal, that's a little better, because then you can touch them, feel them, paddle them, whatever you want to do. But there's been a lot of products. I mean, a lot of products that never made it to market that got best of show. You know, then you have something like the Power Pole Charge, which I thought was probably the coolest deal that ever came out when it did. And it didn't even get a lick. You know, some frog with rabbit fur on it won it. And it's like, come on here. Well, you know, this thing is technology-wise cool as anything. And then
is there two things going on there, though? Sorry. Is there two things going on there? To me, we got two things going on. There are certain companies that always seem to win stuff no matter how ridiculous it is. You know, I don't want to say things are fixed or who's buying the most amount of advertising or some shit like that. Like, something's going down on one element. And then the other element is there are, let's say, a certain type of top water or this or that somebody has copied off of somebody else, and all of a sudden that's going to win 5 years after it was introduced by the original company. Like, see, that shit just kind of irks me too, because
but you know what? Some of the best products we've ever had came from a piece of junk. Honestly, you know, they came from a jitterbug, or not. That's not a piece of junk, but you know what I'm getting at. It was a 45-year-old bait that somebody made better. And I don't disagree with any of that. But when you drew a direct knockoff stuff, I wrote a piece on Wired2Fish some time ago about, I hated it because I think creativity is going away. And, you know, a couple of years ago, we had 82 rod companies there. Anybody who could walk had a rod company. But now you're starting to see things get better. I believe they're getting better. And just to blatantly knock somebody off is not a good situation, but it happens. And I know a lot of people that don't go to ICAST because they want to come back and actually be able to sell something when they come back and not have them stolen from them. And that's scary. That's scary. That's scary.
Not good.
No. And I think we have to support ASA in a big way. And I'll tell you why. It's not just the ICAST and the new product showcase and all that. It's the legislative things that are going on right now. They're trying to take fishing away from us. You know, they're taking, as an example, schools. I read yesterday, and I don't know if it was true or not, but I read yesterday there's moves in several states that money that federal government gave to some schools are going to take away if you have bow hunting, or not bow hunting, but archery in your repertoire of schooling, because they don't want to have more people hunting. And if that kind of stuff's going on, we have to have somebody lobbying for us, and that's why I think the ASA, being involved with them, is very important. And you know, I'm not a big ASA guy. I'm not at all, but I think they have a really strong value. And I think that all of us as anglers, you, me, everybody else, you can't just sit back and let things happen anymore, because they will mess with us like you've never been messed with before. And I fight everything. I fight everything. I'm notorious for that.
ATA is kind of a ICAST of sorts, archery trade association, I think, and that has just fallen apart because a lot of the big bow manufacturers, so it would be like a Rapala or a Strike Kings and Pure Fishings and that pulling out, and they're not going to these archery tails, and that's even more of a hot topic because I think that hunting is definitely under the microscope with the general population more than fishing. I think that's agreeable.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree.
But behind the scenes, yeah, I mean, again, for people listening to this, they probably don't care. But, behind the scenes, I can tell you for a manufacturer to go to ICAST now, they're kind of getting jerked around, to be honest with you. They're getting jerked around. I mean, it's not just money. They're getting jerked around. I mean, some of the stuff with setup, the things that they're doing. And I don't think at some point, I hope they're seeing that because I agree. Like, the fishing organizations are really important. But I hope at the same point that they realize that you don't want to be an ATA because in a matter of 2 years, ATA it's bad. Like this year coming, like the people that are not going is out of control.
Well, here's the other thing. It's either in Vegas or Orlando. Okay, sorry, but it's 2 million degrees in each of those two places in the summertime. Yeah. How about we do a Nashville or we do somewhere where you could drive to it? I think more people would be involved in that. When you got to ship shipping crates across this country, it's not cheap. I was talking to one company, not a very big company. It was $30,000 for them to go to ICAST. Why don't you put that in product development? If that's not going to be of value to you, then why don't you put it in product development? So I don't know. I think that we're messed up because if you go where people are going to pay for you to go, it's sort of like tournament fishermen. These people, the places these guys, the pros go fish, it's not because they're great fisheries necessarily. It's because they got money to come there. Okay? Mm-hmm. And if you don't know that, you're missing the boat because these guys will go out and lobby and try to get some chamber of commerce to give them some dough so they'll come and fish there because they think people are going to follow it along. And, BASS has done a great job of that. But,
well, man, I can tell you that, working the business end of fishing like I do, where we both do, and what somebody, values of, $5,000 or something. And somebody, from a budget standpoint may say, hey, $5,000. Oh, it's only $5,000. Well, take 5,000 out of Joe Schmo's bank account, or as my buddy Sandy always used to say, just try saving 5,000, then you'll find out how much it is. And, one of the manufacturers that I work with, they spend $1 million at ICAST. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the difference is I don't think ICAST has the same benefits it used to, partially because, I mean, she is on your butt today. She wants to know her.
She's about to lose her. The lithium crystals are about to go away here. My wife has a. How can I explain it? She has.
As a media guru, you could try vibrate, Terry. I'm just throwing that.
It is. It's not ringing. My wife has a thing called NPH, which she has a buildup of cerebral fluid, and she has a memory issue once in a while. And so whenever she calls it, she knows. Like I told her I was going to be on this call, but she probably forgot. So she went and had 6 days worth of every hour getting 10 cc's of cerebral fluid taken off her head. And the next thing you get is a shunt, which we're trying to stay away from. She had a stenosis. Not being a doctor, she had a blockage to where the cerebral fluid was building up, but it wasn't draining into her body cavity like yours and mine do. So, but when they did this drainage, then she started getting better. And they said it could be a year before she gets her memory back entirely. But she has to talk. I'd have to talk to her 2 or 3 times a day just to make sure everything's okay at home. And that's where she goes. But anyway, that's sidebar.
Appreciate your health until you don't have it, right? Or something.
Oh man, and getting older, the things that doesn't bend like it used to. I mean, I played center field in college baseball, and I played basketball in college too. And
they had baseball back then.
Yeah, they actually did, and used wooden bats. But that's the best part about it. But no, you wouldn't think I could have done that, but I did, and that's some of the best part of my life was the fact that I was active in sports, and then that was a natural progression to fishing, because I didn't want to lose competitiveness. And I'm competitive in life, but I'm more competitive when it comes around to fishing and that kind of stuff. And I'm competitive when something's going the wrong way at one of our lakes and parks. I get in the middle of it. We had this big tax thing in Illinois where they were gouging our eyeballs out for having a tournament, and we were already giving them Walt Bro money. We're already giving them license money. We're already giving them all this other kind of stuff. And they were gouging our eyeballs out. when we had a tournament. You had to pay.
Didn't they want a percentage of the purse or something?
10% of total purse.
Did that ever? So that, I think North Dakota and Illinois were the first two.
North Dakota first, we're second, but we fought them. Are we going to win? I don't know. I've been
so
fighting.
That's still. I was going to say that's still in process.
Well, they don't have a very good way of collecting it, thank God, because we all have to keep money. When you have a tournament, they don't just come up there and say, "Give me my 10%." You're supposed to deliver it to them within 2 weeks and all that, and people don't, but they just hold on to it. But I've got a really good Department of Natural Resources group in Illinois that do a great job, even though the fishing sucks. It's still, they work really, really hard. And I think that we're making progress on getting that changed. But that's one of the battles. It's a 100-foot rule. You don't have that where you live. If you get within 100 feet of the shoreline, you can't fish there. Well, I fought that and won that on several lakes here. Horsepower limits are big here. The
communist state of Illinois.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's absolutely ludicrous. And we're not the only ones. I wouldn't live here if I didn't have family here, because it's a hellhole. It's terrible. Taxes are awful. Property taxes are out through the ceiling. But my family's here. I grew up here.
I get it. I get how it works. When you started talking about competitiveness and you being competitive in athletes, and it is funny because there are so many athletes that do go into fishing, or you see them doing fishing shows or what have you because they love it. Is the competitiveness was what's kind of screwing us? Because literally last night I get a text message. It's like you got the same people, and they want to let you know it's not gossipy per se, but there was a tournament in New York. I'm guessing it was over the weekend, because I'm not familiar with it or don't keep track of it. It's a little ways for me, but from what I understand, it's a pretty big open. All the players go and do it. It's a decent bag of money, relative. It's no Major League Fishing or Bassmasters, but it's a walleye tournament. And obviously, we don't want to really go through this again, but we had a little bit of a walleye scandal I'm sure you've heard about. Mm-hmm. And we covered that. You guys can go watch that. We'll try to keep away from that. But the joke was with, not a joke, I guess you could say, but the two tournament directors for our two deals that were in issue are great friends of mine. And we kind of, I say jokingly said, well, at least that's beyond us for a while, because everybody's going to be like, hey, those guys went to jail for, albeit probably not enough. They did take their boat. Like there was some, you could argue that wasn't steep enough, but based on precedents, there was a lot steeper than anything else that's happened. Right. And I thought to myself, you know what, at least the Lake Erie Walleye Trail or Tournament ABC or whatever it is, man, it's going to be safe for a while, because somebody's going to sit back there and be like, man, these guys got ran out of Dodge. They got their boat taken. They went to jail. They had to pay fines. Here we are again, literally over the weekend. There was 7 guys banned for life from this open event, stuffing fish allegedly with other fish and God knows what else. The Lake Erie Walleye Trail, I love them guys, but they had a bunch of people DQ'd for other stuff already. It's not even out of, for Joe Schmo, it's not even out of the rear view mirror yet. And it's happening with bass fishing a lot too. Like I said, college stuff, high school stuff. Yeah. But does there seem to be different rules for big name guys in Bassmasters or Major League Fishing or opens or whatever it may be? Because it seems like it to me.
I started this discussion with you about this. Okay. There is no equity. If you got a guy that does X, let's say he fishes in off limits, and he gets a penalty of X, and the same guy that's not a big name guy does that, accidentally goes and fishes whatever, and he gets banned for life or can't fish the tournament or has to turn in his money and stuff, that's inequity. That is not good. And I'm seeing it over and over and over again. I was telling you earlier, the bending of these rules. Come on here. If it's good enough that you're going to do it to this guy, you need to do it to every guy. That crap would end. That stuff would end.
I mean, the how this even came about, obviously I've known you for a very long time, but I'm going down to iCast and I'm listening to a fishing podcast, and Seth Feider, like he just guns out. I love it. And he was talking about, like, again, I don't pay attention to this stuff to know it unless I'm listening to somebody like you or Seth, where you have to kind of put some validity in what they're saying. And he says, hey, Boyd Duckett in a Major League Fishing tournament was fishing in the off limits period, and it was a 10-minute penalty. Mm-hmm. And you're like, the guy that's running the tour, and he gives himself a 10, like after all of this stuff that goes on, and there's obviously a million of things, but it seems like some of the big name guys, and I guess we should, for slander, keep the names out of it, but I can just tell you some of the biggest bass fishing names have been getting either slaps on the wrist or not even getting slapped while other people are. I don't think, you know, a lot of the I guess where I'm a walleye guy, right? And I don't even know if there's a question here, but a lot of people that watch that, we had over 1 million, you know, people that watched our podcast with the walleye cheater thing, and people from the outside, a lot of them that don't deal with fishing, or people in the fishing industry goes, them walleye guys are a bunch of cheaters type of thing. And they ain't wrong, but it ain't just walleye fishing. It's everything. And I guess that's the point of like with this bass thing is it's like, where do you think that this should go with, you know, big time angler A, B, and C not getting handled, and then all of a sudden the other guys seeing that, because they all know, all the other guys fishing know. You know, that's like Seth's thing, you know, that podcast where he was just like, everybody knows what's going on here and everybody's kind of getting sick of it. But what's the next step?
Well, I think the next step is just, if you've got a set of rules, make sure that they're equitable for everybody. You cannot have favorites. If a guy comes in with a short fish and it's a 1 pound penalty, then everybody gets a 1 pound penalty. It comes in with a short fish. And that's where you have this gray area where people are saying, well, you know, he really didn't mean to. He was just testing his boat or whatever. And I don't know the situation with Boyd at all. I don't have any idea. I like Boyd. So, you know, that's not one of those things that I'm going to get in the middle of. But I can tell you that that's what happens. Black and white's black and white. Okay? If this rule says you can't do this and you do this, then you should not be able to fish. And that's the bad thing, is that there's a lot of gray in that black and white. There's a ton of it. And that's the scary part. That's really the scary part. And I think we just got to get away from that. I talk to Kathy Fennell a lot. She's a wonderful person. She's very much in the game. And I talked to her down at ICAST, and she said, we all have kind of a problem here. The fact that you can't make a rule for everything. But she said, we can tighten our rules up, and we need to do that. And I've talked to the Bassmaster folks the same way. You know, Ray Scott would not put up with it. Bob Cobb would not put up with it. Harold Sharp would not put up with it. And it didn't matter who you were. Well, that's what we got to get back to. It's got to be equitable all the way across the board. And I agree with Seth. I think that Seth was right on. You can't have favorites. Can't have it. Not when you got $100,000 on the line. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So what are some examples of, as you say, I like the term bending the rules, where there's these gray areas? Well, like this, I mean, was it Keith Poche that drove his boat purposely across basically a piece of cement to get to another body of water? Honestly, I have less issues with that than the other stuff going on, even though there probably should have been things. I think it's to the point of bending the rules, or the gray areas, to your point. Like what Keith did, he was blatant about, and whether it's a DQ, it's an easy yes or no. The problem is things are so gray that it becomes a controversy. There shouldn't be a controversy.
No, there's a lot of these rules that are unwritten. You know, hey, if a guy's fishing in an area, you don't go in there and beat on his fish, right? I mean, that was the way it always was when I was fishing. Is that when I was fishing at the higher levels, if a guy was there, you didn't go there. That's not the way it is now, but that's the way it was. And he jumped a levee basically. Well, when they fished the Illinois River in the Superstars tournament a lot of years ago, there was a lot of levee jumping. Might have had a trickle of water over it, and that was a differentiator, but it's a gray area. And I think the unwritten rules need to be written. That's just my opinion. I think that if there's something that gets broken, then let's fix the rule right then. Let's sort of like your boat breaking, fix it before you go the next time. Well, if the rule gets broken and you see that it was a bad rule, let's fix the rule. Right?
Yeah, I mean, well, we just had it last week too. I guess again, I wasn't there, but the thing that the buzz on the internet now is the guys that took the top couple spots were fishing in Canada. They had crawlers. You're not allowed to take crawlers from the U.S. to Canada. So it's allegedly, I guess, up there where they were at. And it's that whole receipt game and purchasing in and transporting and what have you. And again, why is that a gray area? But yet they haven't done anything.
They took night crawlers into a place they were told they couldn't. That's a rule infraction. That's throw your crap away.
But yet, so nothing has been done. No. I doubt anything will. And the thing is again, is that something that you just is it the tournament directors where you bring up? And again, there could be 1,000 circumstances like this where you say, "Hey guys, if you're fishing Canada, you better not have live night crawlers, because technically you can't stop and get out of your boat to go buy them, right? So you can't do any of that. So it's just, hey, no night crawlers or whatever that, whatever that is, minnows, leeches, I don't know. Down my way, we can't have leeches.
I got one. Quit using live bait.
I mean, a bass guy would say that. Them live night crawlers are a whole lot better.
Let me tell you why I say that. Name one live bait company that's given anything to the sport.
Well, that's been Al's deal. Al Linder, he said that before, but with walleye deal, it is definitely different than bass. Not saying that, if you went and everybody threw shiners at Lake Okeechobee, we wouldn't have a better go at it. I don't know. I think even backing up from, you said something that made me think. We had Al Linder on the podcast a year or two ago, and I'm quoting him roughly, not verbatim, but it was basically, he said that the rules have not caught up with technology.
I agree.
And, we're a lot of those rules back when we had more maybe good old boys when you were doing it, or when we didn't have text messaging. I can remember I first found out about text messaging, as crazy as this sounds being a young guy, what a text message was, because people were texting GPS coordinates to other people with burner phones during, Lake Erie tournament. And at that point, I didn't even know I don't think we called it text messaging. I think they called it, I can't remember, SMS message or whatever it was, but I didn't know people that were texting, all the time, but that here's a new way. And, I think that the tournament directors have to, because it is a business, and they both need to understand it's a business for both sides. I just don't understand it. I guess it's easy to say.
Eliminate the gray. Eliminate the gray. If you got black and white and the rule sucks, change the rule. Don't do everything you can so that when somebody actually does break the rule, they did it intentionally. And then that way you can just DQ them. But the thing of it is, when it's kind of nebulous, when it really doesn't, I see, I understand why. And that is where you run into problem. If it's black and white and you did this and you knew damn good and well you did this, see ya.
So what's the biggest rule bending going on? I've heard guys like using spotlights at night to find schools of fish, before the tournament. There's a lot of stuff, which now that's been addressed allegedly, but everything's kind of been kept hidden. It's kind of like some of these walleye tournament guys, like why did everybody hide and try to shy away from talking about it?
I think,
why don't they hang them out on the post?
Well, they have, and some guys have been rightfully done that too, and then other guys don't. Like you said, there's some favoritism there. I can tell you how you can fix a lot of this is not have practice. You can't practice with it until the day of the first event. I mean, there was some talk about that initially with MLF, is that no practice. You're showing up and you're fishing, okay? And then what they do is they go in and they look at your graphs. You walk through the day, day before the tournament starts. You better not have any waypoints on them, because you got those illegally because you can't get information, right? 30 days out, you can't get any information. And then just make it so you can practice. But see, that doesn't make good sense either, because a community that's trying to get pros there doesn't want to have just 3 days of them. I mean, want to have 6 or 7 days of them.
But don't you think that the communication thing is honestly one of the biggest issues with seeing who really the dude is? Mm-hmm. The amount of people that I get text messages from, Facebook messages, where I have no clue who they are, but they're coming here to Lake Erie and they need to win Angler of the Year, or they need this many points to make the thing, and I'll give you half this. And it's endless. I mean, every single tournament for people I don't even know. And people that I do know, and I'm shocked that that's how people are handling things. But I know that there's a lot of bass guys getting information illegally, but I don't know how you police that unless you make one a martyr, or.
Yeah, and I don't think you can do it with that. I think that, again, it comes back to conscience. I would no more think about cheating in anything than flying. And I mean, I'll tell you point blank, we got a lot of small lakes. And if you find a batch of fish, say you find them on a Tuesday, you go practice, right? And somebody goes out on a Wednesday and wins a tournament, like a Wednesday nighter or something, in the area where you thought you were going to use them for Saturday, I won't go there, because I don't want somebody to think I went there because those guys caught them on Wednesday. That's just me. That's old school. And that's, I'm not going to do that. Hard to get 150 guys or 200 guys to all be that way. It really is. And it's nearly impossible. what gets frustrating is when you have the group of people either on Bassmaster, MLF, Walleye Trail, whatever, and they all know what's going on. They all know what's going on. They have these groups that, what are they called? Angler advisory panels or whatever. Sure. Bring it up. You know, don't sit on your hands.
Yeah, but there's no follow-up. Like, so we had one a couple of years ago where in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but, you know, those sloughs or whatever you want to call them, and they get these little backwater areas that are just basically big ponds. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's private property, right? Mm-hmm. But technically, if you can access that, you know how this all works. Well, these guys have, a lot of these guys are farmers, and they've built up these, you know, dams, if you will. It's breams, whatever you want to call it. But morning of the tournament, somebody went out with an excavator the night before, I should say. So the morning of the tournament, these guys went over, and somebody took a giant excavator and dug like a, 10-foot wide opening that allowed you to access one of these sloughs or ponds. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem was it happened to be like off of a county road. So it was like, destruction of property. It's this, it's that, and whatever. Well, everybody they knew who did it. I mean, who has a giant excavator, in a tiny, tiny town, right? But the thing is there was like a dozen boats in there. And I'm sure somebody's going to chime in and say I'm off on the numbers, and I probably am because I don't remember. But there was like a dozen boats in there. And guess what? They were like 1 through 12 because they had big fish. Were locked in there. Nobody had access to them. Nobody sore-mouthed any of these things. And again, he's like, well, these 12 guys knew something because Devil's Lake is a giant place. And there's no way you just happen to drive right there first thing in the morning. So the tournament director on, that night after the weigh-in says, hey, we literally have like a criminal offense here because somebody tore out, essentially it was part of a roadbed or what have you. And again, all the legalities aside, that's for another day almost, right? Because that's not a tournament director is not going to arrest you. He said anybody that goes in there in day 2 is DQ'd. Well, half the field was in there in day 2 because that's how well that's my point of this and how this hurts the fishing industry. And you know what? Nobody was DQ'd. Everyone's like, okay, Paw. Yeah, oh sure. Yep. And nobody was made an example of it. And I don't think, people look at the walleye guys right now as the cheater guys, and they've done nothing to change that opinion. But this is just as bad or worse in bass fishing, and they've done just as much or more to cover it up with big name dudes. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, what are some of these bending the rules that you've seen, situations that are happening that guys need to be aware of or we should be changing things for?
Well, I think that the sharing of GPS coordinates is a big one, and I don't know how you police it. I don't have any idea. Your conscience has to be your guide, and if you have a guy that's a local that's giving you GPS coordinates when you know that's illegal, and you take them and you put them in your graph, you're guilty. I don't see how that can be anything different. Now you're going to say, well, I did that. I go back to some of the Tennessee tournaments where the hair jig came about, right? Nobody fished the hair jig there. And all of a sudden, there's a tournament, and everybody and their brother's throwing a hair jig. How did that happen? It's social media. It's texting. It's, one guy tells another guy. That's how it works. Fishing is too great a sport. I love fishing. I love everything about it. You do too. And to ruin it because we think we're going to get a competitive advantage or an angle, I just think it's awful. I feel terrible about it. I don't like it, and I don't know how to fix it. Other than having these kind of discussions where people talk about it. And if you're on an advisory panel and you don't say anything at that panel, get somebody else for the advisory panel. Because you're going to have mad at, Seth probably has a handful of guys that don't like him very well right now. Right?
Oh, I bet. Hey, I know one for sure.
Well, after the Mercer thing, right? So what did he do by that other than make people aware this kind of stuff's going on, right? So maybe it will hinder somebody from doing that. I don't know, think so, Terry. But
I don't think so.
I think it
just like you would think it should, but when you said, and I don't disagree, you have to use your conscience to guide you. I don't think these guys either have it or the ego or the money is too big or guys trying to just keep it. With the walleye stuff that we experienced, like I said, cheating in tournaments, 1 or 2 tournaments after that big, massive deal that they had, or this open that just happened in New York here a few days ago. When you see that happen in that proximity time-wise, like there is no way that things are going to happen or bringing it up is enough.
No.
Like what Seth did, all that did was let people that aren't me and you, and I mean just people that aren't deep into the business, that know what's going on behind closed doors. If somebody's just watching Wired2Fish videos, obviously that's generally not going to be something that's put up on there.
Right.
You know, they're focused on showing you, right, like how to catch fish. Here's a new technique. Here's this. Here's a new rod and reel, whatever. So the average guy, though, is not into the gossipy end of the thing to that extent, or doesn't know all of the little political BS that's going on.
Well, you know, think about it. Back when I started, there were really no such thing as fans. Okay, like we have today. There are people that keep charts and that keep. I mean, they're fans. They're real fans, like Major League Baseball fans.
Go to the Bassmasters Classic if you don't think so. It's like insane.
It's great, and that thing has changed a lot of the way people look at themselves. You know, your fan base, your all that kind of stuff. They actually, people who tournament fish at the Bassmaster or MLF level, they really have fans that follow them around, and you know, we didn't have that. Hell, you'd go to a tournament and you'd fish a tournament and then you went home and nobody really knew who you were or what you did or anything else. Now they've got fans, and it changes. That's socially, you know, they're on social media all the time, and guys act like they know people that don't know people. I mean, I worked my whole life to get the connections I have, right? And then I get on social media and I see a guy, hey buddy, how you doing? And then I'll ask them, do you know that guy? They go, no. He's a fan. True story. He's a fan. So anyway, that's the deal.
You know, when we were talking, me and you, when we were talking at ICAST with a couple of buddies of ours, and one of the things you told me was risk to reward, you know, in relation to this kind of deal. And I think that the reward or the risk, something's got to change here with this whole competitive thing, because I think it hurts fishing. I know a lot of manufacturers now are pulling out of competitive fishing and getting more into, you know, like social media stuff, which I think gets away from the real end of fishing, you know, because there's so much phoniness in there. There's these, you know, I'm not opposed to, you know, YouTubers, I guess is the term. Obviously me and producer do, that's what we do. We put videos up with that. But I think there's a lot of guys that are just making videos that have no intention about doing it right, or actually even fishing or catching or taking a fish from somebody else or whatever it may be. So this whole risk to reward thing, don't you think that balance has to change?
I am committed to the fact that the pro fishing game, we wouldn't have a tenth of what we have if it wasn't for pro walleye fishermen, pro bass fishermen, whatever, because they drive the market. Whether you want to say they do or they don't, they drive the market. So there's a lot of good that comes out of professional fishing. There's a ton of it. And it's usually products, honestly. It's usually where that stuff comes from. This risk reward, what I'm getting at is when you put up $100,000 to travel the country and try to win $100,000, that's a high risk. The reward all of a sudden is maybe you get some sponsorships. If you win one, you get some sponsorships and some of that kind of stuff. That's the risk reward part. I don't know, man. I'm telling you, it frustrates the crap out of me to watch these guys. You know, there's a lot of rule bending that really isn't bending, is breaking. And, you know, getting into places like you mentioned, some of the stuff like that, throwing over a fence, you know, jumping a levee, all those things, man, I don't know. You know, it's like, are we, you know, I'm not holier than thou, but I'm not going to do that kind of crap. I'm not. You know?
I mean, do you think we're going to continue to see the best anglers competitively even fishing? Because, like, you know, the guy you know that I know really well, Greg Mangus, you know, from
as good as there is.
Northern Michigan or Southern Michigan, Northern Indiana, depending on how you look at it. And like, I mean, just the guy that was taking people's Mondays, you know, money on Tuesday and Thursdays or whatever, but also doing other things. And if you were to ask a guy like KVD or Zona or one of those guys, like, hey, who's one of the best fishermen? You know, I bet you they both have Mangus in that conversation.
I would think so. I would agree.
And, you know, are we getting away from those people getting into it? Because just like a couple of my really good friends, I mean, they are that good a fisherman, like that good. And they have zero desire now because of, let it be the payout percentage, or let it be the drama and all the chaos with this. And like my one really good buddy, you know, just like this tournament, he's the guy that texted me about this New York deal. He's like, why am I going to go and just keep bitching about all these people cheating and they don't do anything about it? But yeah, I come across as a whiner if I'm in 10th place, and they had 7 teams allegedly that have been, kicked out for this deal or whatever. And it's like, I don't know the insights of the whole thing of that, but even if there's just one, like, man, things got to change.
They do. And I think nature of people is good. I really am still not going to give up on the fact that most people are pretty good. Most people are pretty good people. You always have a fringe group of people that are going to rob stores and do that kind of stuff. But we have to set the example. When I speak to high school kids and college kids, the first thing I say to them is that you have to set the example. I had a rule in one little organization I ran one time that you had to look like a professional when you went out there, because you're fishing a lake where people are on the bank, and you don't want to go out there in a Speedo or have your big belly hanging out and all that kind of stuff. At least look like it apart. And I got a lot of pushback. I said, guys, just wear a shirt while we're fishing. If you want to take your shirt off at the end of the day, or you want to go pleasure fishing, you want your shirt off and all that, but you're setting an example here. And I got a lot of pushback on that. I mean, a ton of it. People, well, that doesn't matter. No, it does matter, because you're setting a professional example, And I'm sorry, but I think that's all of our jobs. When you talk to a high school kid, when you talk to a college kid, integrity and ethics has to be a part of it. That has to be in there, because we're not going to win unless we do. It's not going to continue to get better. As you're saying, the bow hunting is falling off. You got the shotgun stuff falling off. You got the, ICAST is falling off, supposedly. I don't think it was, but they're saying that. Why? And I don't think ICAST is a place to get sponsors either, but that sure seemed like that was what happened.
Yeah, I know there's, depending on who you, yeah. That's a whole topic for another day, business end of things. But I think in kind of closing her up, I would say that more anglers speaking the truth, like Seth Fighter, so it becomes not a ostracized deal. I think once you get a couple more of those guys, and especially somebody that, I wouldn't say Seth is the top household name or whatever, but obviously he's a hell of a fisherman and done well and deserves his voice,
and very well respected.
Right. But you get a few more guys like that, or maybe a few of those top 5 type of guys that everybody knows, that may be the thing that changes that. It's just crazy. I know when I say I get kickback, I mean, you get a few messages here and there from people that are trying to be little, rats or whatever, as I like to call them, but it's such a small portion of it. But when you're even like us releasing fish on videos, people, what do you think you're so better because you're releasing the fish? Can you imagine that in 2023, getting shit on social media for releasing fish? And again, that's the difference between walleye and bass fishing or muskie fishing or something. But
yeah, but it's that way everywhere. I mean, when I grew up, if you went fishing, you took them home and you ate them, or you put them in the freezer and got freezer burn and you threw them away. That's what happened. It was, whether it was trapping, hunting, fishing, whatever, when you caught whatever you were after, you took it home. And that was a big change when catch and release came along. Because people don't, I mean, how many times have you been when somebody comes up to you and they said, "Are you going to have a big fish fry?" No, I'm letting them go. What? You're letting them go? I hear that yet today. I do.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's one thing I think with the younger generation has gotten better. Compared, I mean, a lot of the guys that are the fish keepers or hoarders are definitely not the youngest guys, believe it or not.
Right.
It's the old guys that used to, that, like you said, that's how they used to feed themselves. So what in closing it up, Terry Brown, because me and you could talk all day, but what is something do you think we need to get out there? Because you are the vocal man. We always hit guys with this and they always stump, but I know you have the gift of gab.
Well, I think that more than anything else is be a good example. And I just said it a minute ago. We have to have not just the old guys, but the young guys too. It's funny because we have lake rules. Great example. I've got a young kid that's 28, 29 years old that I fish with, right? He's a stick. I mean, a good fisherman. And we're out there. And I said, I get really tired of watching people break rules out here. You can't ski before noon. So where are they at? They're skiing before noon. Nobody's policing it. So this goes on for about 6 months last year. So we're out the other day, we're fishing a tournament at this lake, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you believe this?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "These guys are skiing. It's 9 o'clock in the morning." I said, "Well, last time we talked about this, you didn't have an issue with it. What's changed?" But you have to be an influencer. whether it's social media, whether it's writing, whatever it is, you have to influence people's opinion, and it has to be for the right reasons. And if we do that, we're going to be okay. I believe it.
Fair enough. Terry Brown, Wired to Fish. Is it like offensive to say Terry Brown, Wired to Fish because you're just a fishing guy? Or are you happy to be associated with the guy from Wired to Fish?
Oh, since I kind of started it, Wired to Fish is a great name because I read a magazine called Wired, okay? And it was a technology magazine, gadgets and that kind of stuff. Scott and Marty Glovergan are twin brothers. That's true. We didn't want to be bass fish because we wanted to talk about walleye, bluegill, that kind of stuff too. That's the name, Wired2Fish. And where I knew we had it, when we got the logo done, in the bottom of the logo, it says, "Oh my Lord." It was in the font. We didn't know it, right? But it says, "Oh my Lord." And everybody looked at each other. Should we pull that out of there? And I said, absolutely not. There's a reason that's there. Good things happen to good people, and leave "Oh my Lord" in there. And it's always been there. It's always in that logo. And that is something that a lot of people don't know about. They do now, but they didn't prior to that. And it's just, again, it's one of those things that things happen for a reason, I believe. It's not karma or, whatever. It's just, that's the way it works.
Terry Brown, Wired to Fish, we appreciate your time.
Appreciate you too, Ross.
I got a feeling this won't be the last time. We like getting these old guys on here. We never know how long you're going to be around.
Wait a minute. Would you quit talking about old guys? I feel like I'm 20 still. All right. I do. I really do. I wouldn't do the things I do if I didn't think I was still 20. But my age says I'm not. I'm 67, which is pretty old. But I'm not changing. I'll die. I've got wheels on my chair so that when I die, they can wheel me to the door. That's why I have wheels on my chair, because I'm not quitting. I'm joking with old buddies, of course, and I'm not trying to be morbid when I say this, but we have had a lot of old dudes on here. And I think part of it is, like we had Larry Dahlberg on here, right? And great guy.
I felt like it's like he's a fishing savant, right? And if you haven't listened to that podcast, check her out. Or like Gary Roach or the Al Linders, because those guys don't do many podcasts. And I think at some point, like those are the Bill Dances of my world, if you will, or Hank Parkers or whatever. At some point, you're going to turn around and just life happens. And you go, man, I wish I could have learned or heard. And some of these guys that get on there and give some insight, like you give them some insight on how Wired2Fish started and some of that, because people don't really know the behind the scenes thing. I think in fishing stuff, everybody's so quick to want to know about the new lure and this rod. And in 5 years, it's irrelevant because it's either
how many we've lost. How many icons have we lost in the last 2 or 3 years? Forrest Wood, Jerry McInnes, all those guys, you can't go get information from them anymore because they're not here. And I can tell you that you better take advantage of it because they're pretty smart dudes. I learned everything I know from the guys like that, and I miss them.
Agreed. Words to Live by Terry Brown. We appreciate your time, and thanks for tuning into the Bigwater podcast. Producer dude, where are we at? We're on bigwaterfishing.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Bigwater Fishing, Bigwater being one word. Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Apple.
You got them. You got most of them.
Yeah, we got them everywhere. So we appreciate you guys tuning in until the next episode. Terry, thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate you.